You might wonder how I do this every day, and I will take a break at some point. It's called coffee. It's called coffee. Artist Journals, October 9th, 2022, Berlin. My name is Adrian Pocobelli, artist, reporter, who never ceased to be amazed by the new talent. I've said it a million times, this is like a Cambrian explosion. And it's just a daily occurrence. Like, I don't run out of content here. Like, I'm amazed. And it's not like, oh, we found one image today. Oh my God. It's like, no, there's like 5 or 6, 7, 8. So anyway, just another new artist, very interesting work. I'm trying to think of who this reminds me of. I think it's like Kandinsky. But like, not at all like Kandinsky at the same time, but it kind of reminds me of Kandinsky. Draw Pistol is the artist. We are going to come back to that after a couple of show notes here. First of all, just a big thank you to Culture 3. They did this awesome write-up after they did this, probably the nicest interview I've ever had. This came out about maybe a month ago, 3 weeks ago. And Georgie Miller is the writer, and she did a really, really nice job. There are a couple of things in there I need to kind of just a couple of small corrections I got to send in. But anyways, they did a really, really nice write-up here. This takes time, by the way, for people to like write all this. So just a big heartfelt thank you to Culture 3, who again has probably written the best profile that's gotten the closest to my inside, to my inner landscape. So that is very appreciated. If you want to read it, I always link this interview in the show underneath the video, and it goes through the whole thing here. So I'll let you read that, should you want. And also Limbo was so happy to be in the show, and that made me happy. I'm always kind of a little amazed, actually, at how excited everybody is to be in this. But it's like Popple said that one time, I'm on TV. I think he was joking. Like, it's sort of like, and we all know, like, it's not like we're getting thousands or millions of views out of this, but it kind of doesn't matter in a weird sort of way. The importance is the quality of the conversation. And I have to say, it has been growing. I think we're at 173 subscribers today. So let's just see what Limbo has to say. You've got to check out what Pocobelli is doing for the community and the culture. Plus, I'm featured in his latest art journal you can find at this link. Even King One Bit Necro is mentioned, so we're going to have to come back to One Bit Necro. Mysterious, cryptic artist that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, but I'm glad Limbo re-mentioned One Bit Necro, and so this is awesome. So thank you, Limbo. I totally appreciate it. Because, like from my perspective, I'm just glad anybody cares what I have to say. So it's great, Also, another nice comment for Limbo from Aaron Eric Rammel. I love Limbo. I always get inspired by him. So don't ever get down, Limbo, because you have some fans out there. And, and that goes for everybody. Generally, we tend to be kind of hard on ourselves, and you're probably doing better than you might realize. You're probably more present, and people are probably more aware, at least in this community. That's what's kind of nice about this community. People are kind of keeping tabs on everyone and seeing what's going on. It is truly a community, and maybe it's kind of back to because it's small. If we had millions of people here, first of all, I wouldn't even see this comment, right? Because I'd have a million comments if this was huge. I would have gotten a billion notifications, so maybe I wouldn't have seen Limbo's notification. You know what I'm saying? So again, like, and I've said it before, it's like the people who watch this show are in this show. And I love it. I love it. Again, maybe something that makes this show a little unique. Okay, so this is interesting too. I'm kind of big on this tools thing. It's almost like we need a little segment here. This is turning into a whole TV show. Tools. I have to say, I've always loved when you have one of these like softwares that divide an image into the palette. I just find it beautiful. It's like an instant kind of, for me, I just am immediately seduced by this image and go, oh, look at how pretty that is. This is by Paletter AI. You can see exactly how it works. They have a Twitter, Paletter AI. Now, I've seen software like this before, but I guess they're bringing an AI flavor to it. I don't even know why you'd need AI, to be honest. I would think you just kind of sample a few things, but maybe it's a really advanced palette tool. So anyways, I like to look at the tools too here. This is an artist journal, my public journal here, and I'm interested in tools. So Paletter.ai, generate a color palette from an image. It looks like you just go to the website, so that's really cool. So back to Draw Pistol. This is another work by Draw Pistol. So again, just this talent. Now this is a bit more cross-chain. This is not on Tezos, the Pyramid Walker, but just cool. And one of my favorite parts here is probably the background. This background color, if this was white, the kind of cream background really just brings it all together. You almost like get a little bit of Louis Osborne vibes here. It's kind of a mix of a bunch of things, and I like that. So Draw Pistol is on Form Function, which is Solana. Form Function, I shied away from it because of it's like the community gets you onto it. I prefer just these non-gated platforms for the most part. Although, we've already had that debate of why Super Rare does what it does and the good and the bad, and they admit that there's issues with that, as we discussed in previous episodes. But it did shy me away. Like I would have tried, a few months ago, everybody was like, oh, Form Function. I was like, oh, I want to try. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be through this process where the community basically gives me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Remember Sabato got rejected, and it's like Sabato is like one of the better artists, well, quote unquote, one of the most interesting, let's put it that way, artists on the scene here, and he was rejected. So, and then he stopped doing his series. So anyway, Draw Pistol has made the cut, and their Draw Pistol is selling. So just an interesting kind of style. You see it evolving too. It seems to be going in an increasingly abstract direction. Like here we have figures. So just really interesting. It's almost becoming more minimal. This one's quite beautiful. Composition, right back to Kandinsky, right? I mean, I think Kandinsky called some of his works compositions. So there probably is some kind of influence here. But just a guess. So that is Draw Pistol on Solana, Form Function. More cross-chain. I think this is on Foundation. This is interesting, the series, more based on our discussion of surrealism. This is someone called Chris Granneberg. And I have to say, the first thing that this reminded me of was actually, I come from Canada, from Western Canada, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and this reminded me of some of the Aboriginal artworks you see from British Columbia. Like, it's just reminiscent. I couldn't find any. I looked, and I was trying to, but I've seen some very abstract ones. Usually it'd be like red, white, and black. Anyways, Chris Granneberg has this to say about it. These are automatic Pepe 20, was added to the incredibly dense collection of I Am Drew. So happy to have all your support and friendship, Doc. So he talks about this too in another work. Here's another one. So he talks about this, and I was like, this is right into our conversation on surrealism, of all things, and you'll see why. Good morning, Automatic Pepe. New collection on Foundation, link info in thread. In art, automatism refers to creating art without conscious thought, accessing material from the unconscious mind as part of the creative process, Tate Modern. Now it says it's a thread. My style has always been automatism. So this is kind of a surrealist term, as we're going to see in a sec here. Automatism. Even in design, I draw and it works itself out. Better when I have a subject like a chair or a Pepe. On Saturday morning, I drew a circle and then what looked like lips, and it started to look like a Pepe. I went with it and then made more. And finally, after 13 years of not drawing for fun, in September, I added drawing to my daily schedule. Remember Morlakos yesterday, drawing 12 hours a day? Good for him. That's how you do it, folks. and started sharing on Twitter. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the encouragement from everyone who commented, retweeted, liked, mainly the small community and also others I admire. So you see some other ones here. So they're on Foundation. So I brought this up. And what this is the first Surrealist manifesto. And we have by Andre Breton, 1924. And this is what I want to bring here. Surrealism, noun. In other words, person, place, or thing. So it's a thing. Psychic automatism in its pure state. This is the first kind of definition of surrealism, by which one proposes to express verbally. Let me make this bigger for you. Psychic automatism in its pure state, by which one proposes to express verbally, by means of the written word or in any other manner, the actual functioning of thought, dictated by the thought in the absence of any control exercised by reason, exempt from any aesthetic or moral concern. And actually, that is incredibly important, that last part. But let's start with this first part. Just so we walk away with something here, other than a few interesting images, what did we learn today? Is the definition of surrealism, what they were trying to do. Let's unpack this a little bit. It's like raw thought before reason starts making sense of your thought. So this idea of quote unquote automatism, what Breton called psychic automatism. So, and we saw that, that was the word that our friend here, Chris Granneberg, was using. Automatism. So that is right there in the first Surrealist Manifesto by Andre Breton in his first definition. Now, there are several definitions of surrealism, and this is a very important point that I want to bring up here, because we were discussing yesterday artificial intelligence and surrealism and how AI has a surrealistic quality. And it's important that we start unpacking the different definitions of surrealism. I'm not sure we can do it all right now, and I want to kind of wrap up this little conversation here. But there are different definitions of surrealism. And when we're talking about the surrealist movement, we're seeing, I don't think this is the full story, frankly. This is the first, this is close to the Dadaists a little bit. This psychic automatism, just zero rationality. That's kind of what Breton is doing right here. But there are other definitions, like, Dali, if you go to his books, you find he keeps coming back to this idea of to eroticize and quantify external reality. Okay? And this is actually Ballard, J.G. Ballard, who we talk a little bit about, who I argue is actually basically the guy who comes after Dali, unrecognized as such, except by your friend here. I wrote my master's thesis on Ballard's Atrocity Exhibition, which I argue is basically, it's a surrealist project, and his influences are the visual artists. Anyways, I'm going on and on here. But Ballard's definition of surrealism is where inner and outer space meet and fuse. And I actually think that's a better definition. But there's a history, it's sort of like finally on this point. If you look at the history of science, not to get too intellectual here on a Sunday morning, when you watch the lectures on it, you see it's a movement from individuals making great discoveries to today, they're teams of 400 people. And, at that massive, what is it called? I want to call it the LNG. We're thinking about gas here in Germany. At that major, what is it? It's not a synchrotron, is it? But at the major European, where they're finding the God particle and all that business, that is a team of 400 people. And so my point is it goes from the individuals, say, in the 19th century and maybe early 20th century, making discoveries all the way to huge teams. And I would argue we're seeing a similar thing here and I'm done my tangent here. I'd argue we're starting to see a similar thing. Like surrealism was kind of like several minds were at work here deciding what this is. I mean, Ballard again called, he treats external reality as a solidified dream. Okay? And at the introduction to Crash, this is profound, actually. I mean, and back to Dally's eroticize and quantify cryptic definition. He didn't kind of directly call it, but he kept coming back to this idea of to eroticize and quantify. Again, treating the external reality as a solidified dream in a sense that just like the analyst is analyzing your dream, but treat external reality that way. And as Ballard said in the introduction to Crash, the French introduction to Crash, Freud's classic distinction, I can't believe I'm saying this, Freud's classic distinction between the manifest and the latent contents of the inner world of the psyche need now be applied to the external world of so-called reality. That was his defense, his apology, you could call it in the traditional sense of the word. A defense is an apology. That is his defense of Crash, one in the introduction. He is merely just putting a magnifying glass and looking at external reality as a dream. Okay? So that's a long ways away from psychic automatism, is my point here. And so these definitions evolve. Let's move on. You see how complicated this discussion is. So when we use the word surrealism, it's like it can mean 20 different things, right? So as we have this conversation, it's important for us to start to go through some of that. Otherwise, what are we really talking about here? Okay. Another just very interesting artist. Look at this, and there's some music. Just a wonderful world here. Dreamcatcher. Kind of these synthwave colors. Okay, so let's turn that down. Who is this? Yukai on Foundation as well. And I just thought it was, again, a head turner that I saw on Twitter. So that is Yukai, Y-U-C-A-I. You can find them on Foundation. Yeah, so there it is. And you can see that is the palette. Is that synthwave palette? I don't know, but very interesting, right? Let's move on. Very defined style. Another weird image I just saw on Twitter, and I just thought it was a really interesting work here, this GIF down here. I can't read any of this, so maybe we'll translate it. This is a picture when I went to Karuizawa in Nagano, but I really want to move to Suwa or Ueda. I can't speak for luxury. So maybe something lost in translation there, but I just thought it was a original image. Is this by the same person? Yeah, who was this? So this is Komiyama. This is also Komiyama. And look at this crazy cat work. So just a weird art, like weird in a good way, like attention getting. And they are also, I think this is the same person. Hermipe, Takashi Komiyama, they are on Foundation. So, and selling, by the way, for 1 ETH, 1.5 ETH. So this person is doing really well. Very, very well. Sold for 2 ETH. So worth a look there. Ed Marola with just a very interesting look in the studio. You can peer over Ed Marola's shoulder here as he continues what looks like some of these VR works. Just really interesting. I don't think I've ever picked up one of these, but I should. Maybe I've picked up one for like 5 Tezos or something. Typical day at the Labyrinth. I think that's what he's saying. At the Labirinto is maybe what he's saying. So just kind of interesting. Another work, this is also by Ed Marola. So kind of in this series, we saw an earlier version. See if So here's like a lighter version. A collaboration with Estela Flores. So again, just kind of museum art vibes. But really kind of soothing and nice. Again, sometimes when you, like, nothing too harsh against the contemporary art world, but sometimes you're just thinking, are these people trying to bore me to death? You know, and this is just the opposite. This just makes, it's just fun and interesting. And so anyways, that goes on for 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Again, like, is this a single of sorts? Interesting kind of question. And let's just stop. Did I play, maybe those both at the same time? Yeah, this is the music properly. Sorry. I kind of like the other music though. Anyways, nice work from Estella Flores and Ed Marola. A new one from Françoise Gama. So you see, this is just like the last 24 hours, most of this stuff. And so anyway, just a nice little pixel work. Always respectable from Françoise Gama, just a nice work. This is by Capin. Again, combining this kind of static and the stars twinkle. So just kind of an interesting pixel work here as we go down the pixel rabbit hole a little bit. This was a really weird one, Noisy Gardens, but it definitely, like, it gets the points for originality. I mean, you see Tetris blocks here going into grass. So a really interesting contrast. They keep the color of the Tetris blocks. I just think, and the grass is really weird. Somebody was selling a rare noisy garden with the Tetris flowers for 19 Tez. I couldn't resist. There are only 3 in existence. Is investing in your own work a thing? So I guess it's this person here, CCDDBB on object. And yeah, I guess they do a lot of work on Versum and generative art. So just someone to know. Sheepdog for Pixels. And Wasteman Goldminovich has changed his name to Fax Machinovich. So I give points for language as well as for originality here. So we have a Pepe coming out of a fax machine, and then we have Fax Machine Random Output 2, a digital painting by Fax Machinovich also. So still available, small edition, and he burns fast if you're a fax machine fan. Javier Tomeo, whose work we've been watching, AI artist, I think, Firefly Valley, really, really nice work here. Just beautiful. Reminds me of those Japanese screens, like that you'd find like for, you know, hiding someone if they're getting dressed or something. Not a digital screen, but like a cloth screen or something. This was an interesting one, also by Javier Tomeo, Mirage, where you see a landscape in the sky. Again, you see this surreal art, right? So we're going to have to be very careful with how we use the word surreal. And what I'd like to do is actually, as we have this conversation, to go into different definitions so that we really know what we're talking about here. And a new one by Ralph Steadman, who continues to participate here with another physical work. What is this called? Menagerie. So kind of a surreal work in itself. His trademark splatter style looks like actually a Grim Reaper here. Is this blood? So maybe a dark work. So several of Steadman's classic methods come into play, so you can read that. 1997, sold out right away. I think Bubba Boo gave me a heads up on this one while he was watching yesterday's show, so thanks, Bubba. Thank you very much. And just finally here, this is by Turamza, and he's doing a graphic novel, Regularly Regular, interesting title, a pilot. So just messing around with the comic format. So I just, like, again, if I was like Marvel, or I guess Disney now, like, I mean, real collectability is if you have a limited edition. Like, I think you can download the comics now, but they're not NFTs. But if you could start downloading, you know, there's only 1,000 Amazing Spider-Man number 300s, that classic, you know, some of you know that reference. Then it becomes a little more collectible, because right now I have zero interest in, say, downloading a Marvel comic that, you know, it's just to read. There's nothing collectible about that because it's unlimited, right? So anyways, interesting to see this comic on the blockchain. Again, are we seeing the rebirth of the single, the rebirth of the comic to a certain degree? And not new with these works, but nevertheless, very interesting developments. And for that, thank you for reading. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, take care.